Okay. So I hear the sun is shining in your part of the country, and I can't
You just
believe it.
you just
As
asked me
the
if I was
person
ready.
who spends part of the year in the Pacific Northwest, and then chases the sun to Arizona, I am super curious about how the sun feels to you because I know what it does to me.
So you just said, "Are
So
you ready to hit record?" And I was like, "I am born ready."
I
And
know we
the
are recording
sunshine.
officially on the air.
I am a new woman. First of all, time change, spring forward. It's lighter. That's a good
Yeah.
sign. But the sun shining makes a difference in my world. You know, I grew up in like, well, we had a lot of sunshine where I am from, but the most northern city in Canada where there's people. And -40 was an average winter day. And of course, that's changed with global warming. But growing up, I had frostbite all over my body. My hands still turned completely white when they get cold because like the nerve endings are gone. And so I'm not really good in the cold, and I'm a Pisces and I belong by the water. So the good news is the sun's shining and I feel like a happier person, a new woman.
I love it. Well, as you know, I am from Southern California. So, and then I went to school there. And then I met my husband in a nightclub, and then I followed him to northern Italy, which is humid in the summer and pretty gray and rainy the rest of the year, which is really interesting because then I moved to Seattle, Washington, and followed my parents. And I have lived there for the past 30 years. And I want to talk about the cranky crank factor that emerges every October and lasts until the end of May and sometimes July 4th. I understand completely what you're saying. And while my entire family is now in the Pacific Northwest, um, I always knew that that wasn't the place for me. It is the longest place I've ever lived. But I still say I'm from Southern California because the sunshine is my thing.
It's your
And
fuel. Yeah.
it is my fuel 100%. And I had bought like one of those little lights that you put on your desk to give you like the feel of the sunshine. And it didn't fill my soul. But I travel a lot for work and I always have. So what I realized during COVID is that I can escape all winter long in some capacity, sometimes
Yeah.
for a week, sometimes for 24 hours. But getting out of the gray and going into the sunshine is beautiful. And then during COVID, we were stuck and I was grounded and I couldn't move or go anywhere or get on a plane. So I really realized, can I say that? I really realized how much the sun affected me. So I feel your radiant energy today. And as you know, we have a house in Arizona, and what started to be like 5 weeks every once in a while has now turned into the majority of our time. And it's
Yeah,
been,
and buying a new house, now you have bigger roots in Arizona, so who knows what's gonna happen with the
I
Pacific
don't know. I don't
Northwest.
want to say anything because there's lots of people who will be incredibly upset if I make any kind of a major announcement on this podcast without prepping the masses.
And there's no
So,
major announcement needed. It's part of discovering what do you wanna do. I mean, Reiner and
right.
I are so gung ho on moving back to Germany, and that is going to happen when we retire without question, and then we need a warm place too, so maybe Southern Spain, maybe Italy, who knows? Southern
Maybe
Italy.
Southern
It's
Arizona.
exciting. It's exciting. I would do Arizona in a heartbeat,
Yeah,
in a
I know.
heartbeat, but that is so good and such a wonderful start, but that's not what we're here to talk about today.
That isn't what we're here to talk about. But I wanted to start there because it's very important because the sun is shining here too, which I love.
And you're
Okay, so
wearing pink.
today I love this topic, but it's something that shocks people every time they hear it.
And you know what? It's so interesting. And when you hear this, you cannot unhear it.
Right.
And it is related to an incredible book that I read, written by someone named Harvey Coleman. It's called Empowering Yourself. And he
I don't
takes,
love that title. I'm just going to say that.
it was written in the 80s. Give the guy
All
a
right.
break.
Because
It was written
empowering
It is. It's a boo word,
It's
but we'll
cringy.
talk more about what he created. But the interesting part about the book, that is the part you can't unsee, is that most people think if they just work harder and perform better, they will get promoted.
And that's not how it actually works, which is the crazy part of this book.
Yes,
So
it's
talk about those
fascinating.
stats we were talking about, because I think those are, whoa.
Yeah. So he has broken it down into three things navigating your career, I guess you could say. And it's called the pie method. Performance stands for P stands for performance, I stands for image, and E stands for exposure. And his studies say that only 10% of your promotionability is related to performance. And that is absolutely alarming. All that to be said does not mean that you can't not perform. That is your admission to the game. You have to perform and outperform. So that's still not the question, but image stands for 30% and exposure stands for 60%. Some of that being nonverbal, because you are judged, I think, within the first few seconds of an interview, for example, and then the rest of that interview, the interviewer is validating whether or not that judgment was correct. So it is so significant, and I think people really don't, they really underestimate and don't understand it. And we're here to help you unpack that and help
Yeah.
you figure out what to do.
I mean, people lose their minds over that first number. I think I did the first time I read it as well. And I think potential is shaped by far more than what people see, feel, and remember about you than by your task list. And, I used to run experience design at an agency. And that was the thing we talked about. That was one of the first things when we were identifying the audience, the strategy, when people were showing up to a sales center or a brand activation or a retail environment. What do you want people to see, feel, and do when they are in the space? And I think it's the same thing when you think about
Yeah.
work. And granted, right, this podcast is not just about work, but that's really what this book is based on. And I think it's important to talk about because nonverbal communication is, well, the stat we used to give when I was teaching public speaking, fun fact about me that you may or may not have known, that 70% of communication is nonverbal. So how you show up, what you wear, how much, we'll talk about makeup in a little bit and women and perception, but all of those things actually matter. And I had a little epiphany this morning when I was getting out of bed. I live in sweats a lot, right? I work from home. It's always business on the top, party on the bottom. So sweats and Crocs. And then on the top, I have on a nice pink shirt today, by the way, because we just moved and I have a big white wall behind me and I just feel sort of bland. But I was really thinking about, like, I got up, I took a shower, I washed my hair, I put on makeup. I didn't go to the gym today, which usually takes up that time. So I have to pick one or the other. But I feel like a different person today. Like I feel more put together. I feel more articulate. I feel smarter today than I have in the last few days. I also slept
Interesting.
really well. But I do think that nonverbal is such a big part of it.
It is. And you talked about makeup. For men, it's facial hair. And his studies showed that if you remove your facial hair, you will have greater chance of getting promoted. So if image is 30% of that pie,
Mhm.
what can you control from an image perspective? You can control, are you dressing the part? Are you dressing perhaps one level up? Are you conscious about wearing makeup? So I know we've talked about this Harvard and Stanford study before, and Cody Sanchez talks about it a lot. And that is you will get promoted and make more money 40, I believe it's between 30 and 40% faster than someone who does not wear makeup. And so I think that is an overarching dress the part. As frustrating as that might sound, it's an easy win to dress the part. I actually just got off a call with a phenomenal woman that I met on LinkedIn where I meet all my new besties. And she was talking about joining a new firm, financial firm. And her old firm was a bit more of a classic firm, and her new firm is a bit more formal and structured. And the way that they dress, the way they show up, they're in New York, she's in Minnesota. She's like, Hale, like, do I need to change how I show up? And I said, it's never about changing how you show up and wearing a mask. But, you know, if there is feedback that's being given that says maybe you need to think about how you articulate things a little bit different than, like, she's a bit more casual, and she's always been, it's always been about her energy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, think about the part you are now playing in this bigger firm, in this bigger playground. How do you want to be known and seen, and how do you want to stand out? And is it, you know, buttoning up in a business suit, or is it wearing a vest and a sweater? You have to decide who you
Is
want to
that a
be.
corduroy vest?
I don't know if it's corduroy. I couldn't tell, but
Okay, go
it's
ahead. Sorry.
it's a beautiful part of getting to decide how you want to show up. If you don't want to wear makeup, you don't have to. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get promoted. But I thought the stats were really, really alarming.
They are alarming for sure. I'm alarmed. I mean, that's true. Um, I'm alarmed. You know, I was thinking about, so one of my reviews many, 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 many moons ago on this same topic, and in relation to that person you were just talking about, like, I got feedback that said that I was too casual and not strategic enough at work. And I am telling you, I mean, this is years ago, considering I'm a growth strategist. So clearly I've made amends with that comment. But here's the thing that was really interesting. Like, that was the slap in the face, you know, because I showed up professional every single day. My superpower is making people feel right, like they matter, like I'm connecting to them, like, what they have to say is the most interesting thing in the world. And I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that really slapped me in the face and actually made me think differently about how I show up at work. So it was really about, for me, it was really about my image, right? What image was I putting out there, and why wasn't I showing up the way that I could or should? I don't even know how to frame this. And it wasn't about changing fundamentally who I am in any capacity. It was just a very, very, very incremental shift that made the difference, because it actually made me think about what comes out of my mouth. And as you know, I'm quite famous for derailing a room in less than 3 seconds, right? Because I always have something witty and shitty and ridiculous to say. But part of that, I've stopped myself, and now it's just been practice over the years, right? I've been at it a long time, but it was such an interesting thing to happen. So I'm not surprised that she had gotten that feedback, and I'll be curious to see what she does to change it.
Yeah, I love that. It's so interesting what you also just described, because it is building a muscle, right? You don't know strategy in your early career. You're just showing up and doing good work, and hopefully you're executing, and you're waiting for your boss to
Right,
tell you about
right,
strategy. No one really teaches you unless you have the gift of an amazing boss or an amazing program that they put you through and training. And as a former CHRO, our budget is the last to get funded and the first to get
right.
cut. So there is not a lot of training out there. Actually, I said this today, which was super interesting, about when you accept the role. I get people calling me every day about just with horrific, toxic bosses that they are dealing with, and leaders that don't know how to be a leader.
Yeah.
It is an epidemic. It is not, it's serious. And when you say yes to accepting that role, it is a badge
Mhm.
of honor, and it is a responsibility that you have to figure it out. And if your company is not figuring
Mhm.
out how to feed you from a leadership standpoint, get on masterclass, read a book, get out there and figure out how you can be the best
Yeah,
possible
yeah.
that you can be. It's just your responsibility. Anyway, I think it's amazing that you got that feedback. Kudos to whoever gave it to you, because I think hard conversations are the other thing that people avoid, certainly leaders avoid, and that's why you have surprise performance improvement plans or people just getting fired left and right. And it's not right. Just be honest, just be open, learn how to have these
Yeah.
hard conversations.
I mean, I will say that environment was not toxic, and I was there for 15 years. And at the end, when I ended up leaving, it had nothing to do with that conversation at all. It had to do with leadership, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But I was so upset and grateful for it, right? It was that tension, that cognitive dissonance that existed within me because I knew something was up. I just needed somebody to say the words. And it's funny, that person is still a very, very good friend of mine. And I rely on him for honest feedback. And we haven't worked together in years. I mean, he left and went to REI and then has gone on to do something else that's really incredible. But when I see him, which is now only once a year, it's just so phenomenal because we can be really honest with each other. And we were friends before that, and we're still friends today because I think that honest feedback matters. I
Yeah.
had a conversation with somebody yesterday. Um, she's wonderful, and she's asked me to be her mentor, which is very, very exciting. And I think we should do an episode on mentors, but that's for a mentorship and mentees. I think it's an important topic. But one of the things that she said is she's got a boss who's in a role that doesn't have a seat at the executive table, but she's a leader in the organization. And we don't need to dive into that today.
Yeah.
But what this person was saying to me yesterday is she just has no idea what she's been being measured on, and she's so delighted when she gets a task that she can sort out and figure out on her own. And that really boosts her image in a lot of ways because her performance is great. But she works for a toxic organization with a toxic boss who doesn't have any power. And she's just incredibly frustrated. But part of what she's doing, and which I think is the highest percentage here, is she's getting that 60% exposure. Because when she has to create something, she has to present it to get buy-in from the executives. So what's starting to happen is people are starting to talk about her in all of the right ways. And she keeps getting promoted. The challenge is she's reporting to somebody who she doesn't trust,
Trust.
respect,
Yeah.
or have shared purpose with. And
Yeah.
that is really challenging.
Yeah, for sure it is. What is super interesting, actually, I was just going to bring this up, that the three criteria that we talked about, performance, image, and exposure, the problem with them is that they're unknown to the player. Because all we've ever really been taught is that, you need to perform and outperform, and that's how you grow. It's easy to figure out the performance part, easier to figure out the performance part. The other stuff really isn't within your control. And I think, again, if these numbers alarmed us, they're alarming people who are listening to this. And people, I think, just don't know, how can I, besides performing, actually grow if it's something that I can't control. I didn't know that I would get promoted 30 or 40% faster if I wore makeup or if I dressed the part. I didn't know if I shaved my beard or my mustache, I would get promoted faster. I didn't know that I needed to find someone in the organization that would help to give me that exposure and have alliances and have allies and people that are talking about me in rooms that I'm not in. I didn't realize that was 60% of the puzzle. So I think that's the real issue. So for the person that you're mentoring, kudos to her for finding the best mentor. Let's talk about that. And kudos to her for finding ways around how can she get the exposure and the visibility that she needs to be able to still grow, whether she stays at this company or not.
Right.
This will help her.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. I think you bring up a really good point. There's a lot of, and we've talked about this before, right? There's a lot of proactivity that has to happen as you navigate your role, your career, anything that you do. And I think so for everybody out there, we had a failed recording last week. So we sort of started on this topic. So I don't remember if we've talked about it in a previous episode or we talked about it on the failed recording last week. But the thing I will say is that, while you can have a really good, boss or leader who is protecting you, the reality is know company is going to hesitate to lay you off tomorrow, right? And it's incumbent upon you to find your path forward, whether that's you're going up in the organization, you're staying lateral, or you're getting out. It doesn't matter, but it's incumbent upon our individual selves to figure it out. And I think what you bring up is really interesting. Like, how am I supposed to know? The thing that is different today than was when we started in our careers back in the early 1900s is that there's access to information everywhere, right? How do I get promoted? What does that look like? What do I need to do? This is the type of job I have, right? That access to information. And quite frankly, I might be a good mentor, but what you do is coach people on all of these things, right? So there's even, and you're kind of a sample of one. There's not a lot of you out there that are so specific. And I think educating yourself on what's possible and what's out there is important, because you might have a terrible leader. I as a mentor, I don't know everything and know every resource. So I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I think you get the message.
I get your message. What I actually think would be interesting now is to just help people to frame out the components that they can control from a performance perspective, right? So if you have a boss that is not clear on what is expected of you, your job description is probably a dud. It probably was never written properly in the first place. Again, I sat in that chair. I know they're usually duds. Or the role has changed so much because so-and-so and so-and-so got fired, and now you've absorbed all of their jobs. And there are companies that also are not clear in communicating what are the actual goals of the organization. And so you as an employee don't know how you fit in, except if you can find that information, you build your own performance plan, if you will. Find out from your boss, what are their key metrics? What are the overarching metrics of the company? And make sure that the work you're doing is driving to those 3 to 5 things, or it shouldn't be on your priority list. And then you can weight your tasks by importance, because you won't get noticed if you're working on the stuff that doesn't matter. And then once you can identify that, you share that with your leader, you get the alignment, and then you're clear also on how are you being judged against your performance? How is my bonus being paid out if I'm successful in these metrics? The amount of people and leaders that I've seen over my career that did not have metrics for their people is alarming. And then you are judging them based on subjective things, and it becomes just stupid. Actually, if you are a company and you are not clear on that, how are you driving performance? I look at your numbers. If your numbers are crap, there's probably a reason why, and it's very, very simple. But your job as an employee is to get in the driver's seat, because if they're not doing it for you, and even if they are, you can still challenge that. You can still ask questions around it. You can still bring other things to the table. So fundamentals, get clear on your own framework for driving your performance and get aligned.
So the thing that's important here too, that I also want to bring up, that is also shocking to me, because I coach a lot of leaders, right? They're not even having one-on-ones with their direct reports on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. So I would actually like to take this framework back. Your face says everything. I want to take the framework back to the basics. Like, how can you expect your executive team or your direct reports, whomever that is, it doesn't actually matter, to grow within the organization if they don't know what they're being measured against, I'll get it out, what they're being measured against, but then also your expectations, what their expectations are, what's visible, what's not visible, everything you said. Like, not having those one-on-ones, I think, is such a detriment. And if you're not getting them from the person who you report to, you should adamantly request them.
Yes.
Right? Again, going back to being proactive and how do I know what to ask for and where to look? That's job one. It's just making sure that you're meeting with the person with whom you report to.
It's so simple and so basic. And it's funny, we've talked about this stat before too, that less than 10% of people follow up and say thank you. So, It's pretty easy to
Answer.
stand out. And if you're proactively, my favorite people that were on my team when I took over a new team, what were the people that proactively put it on the table and were like, I'd like to meet one-on-ones, has this time, your calendar looks open. They bring an agenda or they send the agenda in advance. Like these are the people that are just taking those little steps, and they
Yeah.
are much bigger than you realize, because most people are not doing it. And then following up the next week or the next, your bi-weekly, here's what we talked about last time. Here's what I've done about it. Here's what I need. Here's the roadblock I need you to remove. It's really quite easy to navigate your boss, to help set them up to also advocate for you and do the work you need them to do.
Agreed. As part of those one-on-ones, and then we'll talk about the next section, because I love it, because it's all about image, which I love. But those one-on-ones are really designed for a check-in. But that check-in for you as the employee is, here's the challenge I had, here's how I tried to solve it, and here's where I need help. And those three things change the dynamic of every single one of those conversations, right? You can make it about your personal growth within the organization. You can make it about a client. You can make it about a colleague. Like, it's not just about solving problems for your client or about your product or service.
Yeah.
It pertains to everything you do within the organization, and it gives that one-on-one structure.
Yeah. And it's so simple and so easy. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
We talked already about image, and you mentioned 70% of image is nonverbal. What I think is super interesting, okay, 20% is verbal and 10% is tone. Tone is the one that'll sneak up on you, because tone is one where I just got off a call with a woman who was in tears because she got a corrective action from her leadership because people don't like that she's direct. I'm surrounded by people who are very direct in my world, and it took a minute to actually adjust to that, right?
Yeah.
And people take things personally, or they're sensitive to things, but it's fascinating about how you dress or how you show up, or if you wear makeup or not, that serious game players eliminate luck and they wear their best suit every day. That is just like really so interesting, as I wear a white t-shirt today. But I
I'm
always
judging
dress
you.
for the part. What's
I'm
that?
judging you. I'm judging you.
I love it. I am wearing a pretty necklace, but I always dress the part, and it felt great to
Yeah.
dress for the role that I wanted, the role that I was walking into. I think it's really simple. It's really simple. Don't
It
wear a
is.
hoodie. Don't wear a hoodie. Don't wear, like, oh my gosh. I think I did a video about wearing a hoodie, and the girl got fired because she was told that it's business
You
casual.
did.
Her boss told
Yeah.
it. Yeah. She told her a few times, and she ended up actually terminating her. It was in her first week. I mean, when you're told how to dress the part and you still don't do it, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So we have like a list of some things to think about, like how do you show up in meetings? You know, what I talked about this morning, just getting ready. My entire attitude is different today.
Yeah.
What is your executive presence? What does that mean? I was told I needed to be more strategic. Shift immediately, right? After I got over being offended, then I shifted.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
What do you mean I'm not strategic? So I changed that immediately. But, tone, body language, responsiveness, all of these things matter. The biggest one that I love, because I'm such a people person and I'm an extroverted extrovert, is that team player energy, right? Working from home still hurts my feelings, and it's been 6 years, right? But I need a team of people, because the energy I get from it and the energy I can give to it is a game changer in terms of image. And then, how do people feel after interacting with you? How do you make them feel? What is it like to be in a room with KL? What is it like to be in a room with Ricky? Right? Those are really important things to think about and be self-aware about.
Yeah. Those last two things actually, for me, apply even more so to the exposure part, Because that
Mm.
is, what are they saying about rooms you're not in, right? And
Yeah.
how are you saying yes to the projects that are maybe outside your scope? How are you supporting the team, even if you're underwater? That is, that's more actionable than just the image. But of course, there's an image related to it. But I love those two things, and actually think it segues really beautifully into exposure. Um, and I think one of the things that's really interesting about this one is that people confuse exposure with self promotion.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's not what it actually means. It means, what's your visibility to decision makers? It means, how are you known beyond your immediate role? It means, are you associated with important work, the work that actually matters? Are you on those project teams? Are you saying yes? Are you jumping in? Are you
Right.
supporting when the company has ERGs? How are you getting that visibility and being noticed? That's the exposure part. Then the image plays a part in that too. But again, that's 90% of this game, which is just
So
unbelievable.
crazy.
Still
I mean,
unbelievable.
yeah, and exposure, I mean, it often comes with a short-term trade-off, right? You're going to add something to your plate. You're going to have to work a few extra hours. You're going to have to sacrifice something in your personal life or maybe your workout, which this week has totally been about sacrificing my workout, which I'm very sad about. But it has long-term payoff. And that's the thing we're talking about here is how do you proactively set yourself up for success? And I also think it applies personally as well, right?
Yeah.
This is not just about work, but this is how you show up in the world.
Right. Your communities, who you're saying yes to, do you follow through? When you commit to something, how do you show up for your friends? Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
absolutely crosses over to multiple
Yeah.
different things. The one thing in my career, I think that got me to the C-suite was I raised my hand for every cross-functional project that I could, because I'm a
Mhm.
learner and I always wanted to learn something new. And I just found it so fascinating to then see how all of these other things impact the work that I'm doing and the bigger picture. I loved saying yes, too much so, where then I just would bury myself in work, which, was a trade-off that wasn't necessarily healthy for me. But I sure learned a lot. And I'm quite sure it's why I got where I got, because I had sat in so many chairs and I had
Yeah.
touched so many different people. Yeah, it worked well for me.
Yep. I understand that a lot. And it resonates. So what are some of the things that people don't actually say out loud and why do people resent this model? Because, I can hear everybody click, 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 texting their friends. Wait a minute. What the hell is going on here? How is this even possible? And why didn't I know this? Because it feels unfair to some
Yeah,
degree.
yeah,
As fashion mavens, the two of us, right? We can dress the part
yeah,
very easily, right? It's not a huge stretch. So I think let's talk a little bit about this because I think it's important. And the big takeaway here is like, yeah, you might resent it, and yes, it feels unfair, but what are the things that you can do proactively? And ignoring it to some degree is career self-sabotage,
yeah,
right? I'm not going to buy into the system, right? Which is what I hear from my son all the time, but he's 22, so
yeah.
we'll allow it.
That's okay. He may never buy into the system, and that is
Right.
perfectly okay. The fact is, this it doesn't mean that you have to lose your integrity or completely change how I don't ever want to wear makeup. Okay, that's perfectly okay. That's not to say that you are not going to ever get promoted. It's just I found it to be so fascinating. So if there is some clear, easy wins, that by saying yes to projects, by participating in company events, by being a team player where I jump in and support the people around me, by
Mhm.
dressing the part, if that is going to help me to grow, for me, it's a really easy one. But for some, it might not be. So if he wants to push against the system, that's okay. He'll find a career that allows him to do that
Yep.
so he can be his authentic self. And again, I'm not saying that I don't believe you. You have to be inauthentic to do this. I happen to love fashion. I happen to like
Right. Right.
wearing makeup. I happen to like that growth mindset and doing those things. Some people are more introverted or very shy and they don't say yes to things because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Like there's a lot
Right.
of reasons why people won't do it. And it's perfectly okay. It does not mean that you are not going to grow in your career. It's just getting really clear on how you want to show up. And if you want to be a C-suite leader or if you want to be an entrepreneur, you might have to think about, okay, if I'm going and looking for funding and I'm trying to raise money, I have to be very thoughtful about how I'm showing up in those meetings. And it's more awareness, and then you get to choose.
Yeah, and it's not about gaming. Pie is not about gaming the system.
No.
I like what you said there. It's like finding your path forward and what is going to ultimately work for you, but nothing happens without a plan. And we
Yeah.
talked about that much earlier in this episode, right? You've got to know what the plan is. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? It doesn't mean that it can't shift or that you won't change your mind. But having, I like to call it the beacon. I have like this image of like this big bright light, and then there's a road that goes to it, and I zigzag all over the road. But I know what the guardrails are as I'm bouncing off of it.
Yeah.
But literally, that is my visual of how I achieve things because I know where I want to go. It's how I get there that has some different types of proactivity to it, and I allow myself the opportunity to change along the way because
It's
or shift, I should say.
yeah, pivot for sure. What's interesting about what you said is I didn't have a beacon. All
Mhm.
I knew if I look at my corporate career, I just wanted to grow. I didn't know what the C-suite was.
So interesting.
I knew that there was someone called a vice president and a president, and that seemed kind of cool. I had zero. They were on stage talking to us. That seemed really cool. I had zero clue that I would end up in the C-suite one day, just like I had no clue that I would be an entrepreneur one day.
Yeah.
My philosophy was always, my beacon was show up as your
Mhm.
best self every day and do good work. Those were my two, and treat others kindly. So I think that partly goes with show up, but those are the three things that was my philosophy. And say yes, and just be hungry and
Yeah.
be resilient, and just those were the three things. Anyway, I still to this day don't necessarily have a beacon too, because I'm very not tied to outcomes. And I realize that there's just so much that's not within my control. And that if I get too tied to something, does that then derail me in a different way? So it's so fascinating. I love the beacon. I want to learn more about that and why and how that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, let me be clear, right? I've said this before and I will say it again. My brand essence is blind enthusiasm. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily had the career beacon, but
Yeah.
when I'm in a role or when I've decided to do something, I do focus on where that is going and what I want it to be
Yeah.
so that I can figure out the path for how I get there. I also didn't know that I would ever be a strategist. That's not what I went to school for, right? I fell into it. But I also didn't know that I'd be an entrepreneur, right? I never thought this would be the path for me. But now that I'm here, it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the thing that I'm striving for. This is how I'm going to help people. And my goal is to make impact. My beacon is making impact.
Oh, yeah.
How do I get to making impact for my clients, for the people I come in contact with, building widening my aperture for my community, right? Like, how do I make impact in everything that I touch and feel and do? And that's really when I say beacon, that's what I mean.
I love it.
I'm fly by the seat of my pants and I'm proud
Love
of
it.
it. And I like that. And it's why I can be so free spirited. Um, but I do think Well, I will table it because I think another episode we should talk about like micro goal setting, the 14, 30, 60, 90, and what that looks like on a quarterly
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
Because plans change, things change, but my beacon never changes. I always want to make impact.
I
How
love
I
it.
do that changes along the way.
That's interesting. So I would totally align with that. I just never thought of that as a beacon, as a North Star. I am not interested if I'm not making an impact, I'm not making a difference and blowing stuff up. I mean, if even in my corporate career, if I was put in a job or said yes to a job that already had everything in order, boring. I took an entrepreneurial approach to every job I ever had,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
clean sheet of paper. And I had so many great bosses that allowed me to write my own ticket in almost every role that I was in. So, yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think that's amazing. I want to just take a moment to tie these three things together, though, because I think this is really helpful. So, performance earns your seat,
Mhm.
image builds trust, and exposure creates opportunity. I think it's such a beautiful way to tie everything together. Performance earns your seat, image builds trust, and exposure creates opportunities.
Feels like a extended haiku. I like it.
I hated haikus.
Oh my
I
God,
know
I love it. How can you hate a haiku?
I
A
hate haikus.
haiku. Oh, I can write them so fast. It is my secret sauce.
Okay, well then do a haiku on
Not on
pie.
the fly. I can
Okay.
write them so fast. I have to think about the topic that I want to write the haiku about. I will show up on our next episode and I will start with a haiku. That's
Okay,
my
I love
promise
that.
to you.
I like
Uh-huh.
that. I like that a lot. I think that's great. Thank you for that. I think it'll
You're
be
welcome.
really inspiring for our audience and for me.
Yeah, I'm
We
here
could
for
write
I'm
a
here.
haiku about our friendship.
We should. Okay, I'm making a note right now on my to-do list. I'll submit some entries since you don't like writing them and I love writing them. It was my
Yeah,
favorite
please.
thing in English in high school. I've written about my refrigerator. I've written about the person that I didn't get along with at work. I've written about everything.
Wow. New things to learn about Ricky
Yeah.
P every time I
Look
meet
at
her.
these.
Okay. So here's three questions that our audience can ask themselves this week. How clear is my performance? What does my image communicate? And who knows my work beyond my manager? That is so huge because don't think for a second that your
Oh,
manager
yeah.
is talking about you and promoting you because you might be threatening them because you're better than them or you're stronger than them. I see that a lot, a lot, a lot. So who
Yeah.
knows your work beyond your manager and get
Yeah.
out there and start making an impact.
Making it happen. So, okay, one thing, and then we can wrap.
Okay.
I just got out of a publicity course. I signed up for a 4-hour mastermind. And if you saw my post on LinkedIn a few months ago about the snake oil saleswoman, I was really like sour on mastermind. It's like really sour. This wasn't long enough. It went so fast. I was so sorry that it ended. She was phenomenal, and I'll put her information in our show notes.
Who
It was
is
such a
she? Do you know her? Do you have her name?
I do. Her name is Jill Lublin, and I can't think of what the name of her company is right now. We'll include it in the show notes. She was phenomenal. She led a phenomenal class. Look, I know how to write my bio. I thought I knew how to write my bio. I thought I knew how to write my problem statement and the things that I solve for. And I thought I knew where to show up and how to show up. It was fantastically fun and such a good time. It's a lot of transformation, information, workshopping. I feel inspired. So I think, asking ourselves these questions, even for you and me, is really important because it's really about publicity and how do you promote the person, the entity that is KL? How do I promote the entity that is Ricky? And I think thinking about it that way is really important. When I was looking at exiting from my last full-time role, one of the things I did is I hired a resume writer
Mm.
to write my resume for me. not because I was going to go look for a job. Quite honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just wanted to be reminded of what I've done, how I've done it, and the impact I've made through someone else's eyes, not my own. So I think this is really important, right? Like, how clear is my performance? What does my image communicate? And who knows my work beyond my manager? I think about it in terms of what I did for my resume, and what maybe it's just your own internal written, because you have to write it out,
Yeah.
but it's your own internal document or
Yeah.
your own internal resume that will really make this clear. Because if you just think about it in your head, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Once you get it on paper, it becomes real.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it's actually an interesting segue. So I'm building with an amazing woman named Leslie Lulham two tools. One is a networking tool and one is your impact tool. And that is keeping track of what you've done, how you did it, and the impact that it made, because you forget over your career. So she's building this
Mhm.
tool. It'll have AI associated to it. It'll have AI associated to what interview questions might I get? How could I answer them based on these results? What kinds of jobs could be interesting for me? Same with the networking tool, ticklers to say you haven't followed up with Ricky in a while, follow up emails, all AI generated. And this impact tool, I think, is going to be both of them are going to be game changing. But to that
I love
point,
it.
you don't remember what you did 20 years ago, and you
Right.
certainly don't remember the stats associated. So it's something that I talk to everybody about. We build it together when they coach with me, but then you've got to keep it up afterwards. And that you refer back to and prep for all of your interviews with that as your baseline. Really beautiful example. And I think, just to wrap, it's work hard, show up with intention, and make sure the right people are seeing you. Who
Yeah.
are
And make
these
sure you're
people?
checking in on yourself. One of the things I learned is every 30 days do something, every 60 days take a look at your what your offer is and what you're doing and how you're talking about it, and then every 90 days look at your bio and make sure it's still up to date and reflecting who you are and what you do. I just thought that was such a good schedule, right? To just keep it up. By the way, Leslie's phenomenal. I do owe her a call back. We've been trying to get rescheduled. I think I scheduled her once. I referred her to you, and then I've just moved on, but I need to talk to her. So thank you for that
She's
reminder.
outstanding. She's built a company called Introli. I actually have embedded her into my business. So for my clients who are looking for
So
jobs, she
awesome.
does an intake and she tells you what jobs with the titles that you're going after actually have openings right now, and how you might be connected to them or someone in those companies on LinkedIn. It is absolutely game changing, and it's not outrageously expensive for people to do if they wanted to do it on their own. It's part of my
Yeah.
package, but it is game changing, seriously game changing, because I know I've said this before. Only 20% of your time when you are looking for a job should be spent on looking for a job online. 80% of it should be spent networking. So she takes out all that guesswork for you, because we know that the ATS systems are rarely seeing you. So when you apply, she's shaving down your time invested. And when you're applying, you're not just applying, you are actually looking for the people inside the organization who can get you connected to the right people, and that you're reaching out to them directly, reaching out to the hiring manager and all that good stuff. So yes, shout out to Leslie. We'll have to make sure we tag
Please.
her. And yeah, she's really fantastic. You've got to go get all the tools, because the game changes every day. It is
Every
so,
day.
like if you were looking for a job 2 years ago, it's completely different. And you've got to think about how you're showing up. And same inside your organization, things are changing really fast.
Yeah. I just want everybody to know who's listening. Like I had to pick my chin up off the floor when Kale was just talking about that. We will include it in the show notes for
Yeah.
sure. Thank you so much for showing up today. It was so good to see you, by
I
the
know.
way, my
I
friend.
miss
I've
your
missed
face.
you.
I love you in pink. And thanks to
Thank you.
everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.